Recording in progress.
Thank you. There's no good session tonight, so we had nothing to report from that. I did want to remind everybody to do the community survey. So that's live on the website, and you'll also be receiving a copy in the mail, and it's going to be very important as we go into the budgeting and planning for next year. And am I okay? Okay. First thing on our agenda tonight then would be actually the approval of the agenda. Are there any questions or comments from the council? All right.
Well, I don't know if it's specifically about the agenda, but the minutes. You know, I have no time on Monday to look at minutes, so I count on them being there on Sunday evening.
Yes.
And I think we're months behind at this point, so I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, sure. We'll talk, let's talk about that. That'll be the next. That's okay. We're almost there though.
Okay.
Any questions or comments about the agenda? Okay, going to the public, any public comments about tonight's agenda? All right, then I'll bring it back to the council.
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then to Councilor Breckenridge's point, we have no minutes to approve tonight. We are 3 months behind, so we'll try to get them out early next time so that everyone has time to kind of review those well in advance. Because I do understand that members of the council work and sometimes it's not easy to catch up on that sort of thing, but we're just got a little over.
And as I understand it, everything is 72 hours, not just the announcement, all the materials, it's also 72 hours. So if it's not out, we can't get it Sunday night because it's got to be out for 72 hours. So we need to aim for 72 hours, not
My understanding is
not piecemeal from 72 hours on something like has to be all out to the public for consumption for 3 days.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the council reports and committee assignments. I'll start to my right then, Councilor Tuttle.
Right, so I'm part of the RCA. Last meeting, we found out that the director that's been there for 15 years, Matt Marshall, decided to step down. Matt's instrumental in getting the RCA started and all the programs off the ground. He developed a team. He said himself that is self-sufficient, which allows him to move on to other interests, which is him and his family purchased the most really active in the West Haven community there. At that same meeting, there were about 30 to 40 members of the public who voiced their concerns about the Humboldt sawmill biomass plant and asked the RCA to end that contract with biomass plant. They voiced their concern that it was including the air, the Scotia area, as well as contributing to global warming. Unfortunately, the RCA contract with Humboldt sawmill will expire in 2030. And at that time, the RCA have many new renewable energy sources online, which will allow them to decouple that current need from the biomass plant. Thanks.
Nothing to report that relates to Trinidad. For Humboldt Transit Authority, our rehab Redwood Region Economic Development. Both boards were mostly handling.
I just have a update on the community emergency response team. We had a trailer inventory that we did last Sunday and looked at what was in there and what's needed. And then also a go bag training was done for the CERT team. And the team is still planning to do a public facing event on May 11th. We have a little working on town hall rehab. Jack talked about that last time. And we're going to meet again tomorrow. We're working on looking at updating potentially kitchen appliances, replacing windows in the town hall and painting and things like that. So we're making some progress, but working through kind of the details at this point.
About the Animal Advisory Committee, I've talked to people who have agreed to be upon it. And they're going to, let's see, Andrew Davis, one, and Jackie Hostler-Carmison, and Ted Peace. And then with Jack and me, that makes a nice group. I believe they have to be voted in or something tonight. But already I'm getting emails from people in town saying they want this or they don't want that, or, you know, so there are a lot of good ideas.
Yeah, Jack.
Oh, we had a trail committee meeting last month and began to look at possibly how we could build some posts or get some posts, put it in the ground. We're hoping that we're gonna have another arrival on the 16th. Everybody can make it. And it'll be looking at what we might be able to do with media on some of our trails to at least get started. Plus looking at signage. So we're getting things started. It feels good about it. We're making some progress.
Are there?
Real quick, does the Trails Committee need any help with those posts, putting the signage on the posts?
We're right now we're just trying to develop what kind of closely we can put around home. Get some ideas. Then we'll be looking at how next steps. I'll try to get back to them too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Right, any public comments or questions about the council reports? Right, let's move on then to the staff reports, and I'll turn it over to our city manager.
So the had a little bit of a raspy voice. It was much worse over the weekend, and that's why I delayed in being able to get the report. So the report is first of all, the water tank and pipeline project is meant to begin next week. They're mobilizing by Murphy's. So in that area behind Murphy's. And so hopefully they'll get started, and they'll initially be working on Edward Street to relocate the water pipeline from Van Wyck to Edwards. And then any water shutoff notices will be sent to impacted households against the construction. So I don't know if anyone's received anything, but they should give it to you approximately 10 days in advance. I mean, I'm fine with a week in advance, but in the past we had asked for more time. The Absalom Memorial Trail, we had a meeting yesterday talking about rerouting the lower portion of the trail and then opening it in July. So the portion of the trail that meets Old Home Beach has gotten eroded to the point where safety has become a serious issue. It's almost like a vertical drop, and and plus the soil is such that it's getting real traction. So that has led to the earlier than planned rerouting of the trail at the base. So that was originally part of the long-term improvement, was to reroute to the traditional trail. So now we're working, meeting with the Churai management team and Redwood Coast Action Agency was present at the meeting on Monday. Our Public Works is going to be trimming the trail so that RCAA can access the lower portion. And then, so that'll be happening within the next few weeks. They anticipate, without looking at it yet, because we were there on site and we couldn't get down to the portion that they need to clear, but they're hoping they can do it within a few days of when they move. And that's just the clearing portion of it. Then after that, there's an area, we'll try to determine how many areas might have some seepage, but there's at least one area where there is some water where they will probably put some kind of wooden planks so that people can go across that without gathering mud, making the trail even worse.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Eli, did I understand correctly that you're saying that they hope to open the trail by July?
Yeah, well, let's say, I'm using the words in July, so maybe it might be earlier.
But that,
Yeah.
that is.
Yes, July is the plan, exactly, yes. So we have the meeting and the GRI management team will address long-term plans at a future TMT meeting. The water plant has been experiencing some high turbidity due to the rains. As a result, staff has ordered media. It's coming all the way from the East Coast. We were able to get a few other bids, but they were delivering them like in one large bag type thing, which just wasn't practical for our crew. So we got these in individual smaller bags, but it took being able to get it from the East Coast. But that'll be arriving by the end of the month. And water plant staff will be able to take care of changing media, meaning the garnet and sand that's in the 6 filters, and redoing them. Also, the Hardy Rye Celtic Fair will take place on May 18th in here. There will be several bands performing, one of them called Black Irish from Sonora, which apparently has a very good reputation and good following. There will also be dancers performing. Irish food, artisan vendors will be located outside, basically right along the tennis court area. Ira's Irish shop from Old Town Eureka is supposed to be there, which would be the first time, at least that we know of, that she has set something up other than being in her shop. Also, a goat will be crowned as part of the traditional ceremony, and then tickets will be sold for the live entertainment in here. And tickets so far are going to be sold at Wild Berries, and they're in the process of identifying a location in Trinidad also to sell tickets. And then Jack Tuttle and Trevor and myself and you, I think, anyway, a few people from the TCLT, the Trinidad Coastal Land Trust, and then also one of our grants people, Angela, all met at the playground, proposed playground in Saunders Park. So we were talking about possibility of getting swings and slide and so on. So I don't know if Jack has any further details that he wants to share, but this is in the preliminary stages, and we're trying to figure out exactly where it could be located there.
Right, so a handful of families in the community came up to me and asked me for a playground that would be open all the time, because the playground at school is mostly closed through the summer, through the after school program. So we're thinking about, using grant money and be able to have a public park. I'm hoping for something similar to it's a little bit smaller than the Crescent City Beautiful Park, but something beautiful, wooden. But we're definitely gonna be putting it out to the public to ask for feedback of what they were looking for to kind of blend into the community.
That used part of the pasture property, or is this more in the park area?
More in the park area, and maybe take out some of the concrete. Discussion about even taking out the possible. It's not being
Yeah,
used.
it's not being used much. Other, sorry, Eli, did you have more information?
Yeah, I covered my staff report, but then I have my Anita report.
Okay.
She asked some questions, so I
Okay.
did want to follow up on that. So first of all, total amount paid for the month of February and March to Coleman Engineering. So we have not received the March invoice yet, but we did receive the February invoice, and that's $11,042. It was higher than the prior month, and the main reason it was higher was because of the turbidity at the plant. The bill itself shows all of the calls, meaning it just gives time after time after time where the alarms were going off. There were even several power outages that happened, so that all entailed extra time. So that's the main reason.
Said 11,000.
$42. Then total amount paid to Pacific Watershed Associates thus far in 2024. We've received one invoice for 2024. And the total there, with the fine print, is $1,486. And that was basically part of a agreement that we have with Green Diamond, where staff goes to check with the Leavenworth Creek stream crossing and road stormproofing inspection. That's called for in a grant that needs to happen every year. So.
Eli, can you tell me how much it costs us every time the power goes off? Do they have like a specified amount of like hours they bill us?
No. Excuse me. I'll look at the invoice to see, I mean, it's not a specific amount. It's just reported as a power outage, which requires extra attention. But then what happens is Phil requests that one of the two guys that are in town respond to the plant, because they have to physically turn the plant back on when the power outage happens. We do have a generator also, but for some reason, they have to go ahead and turn the plant on. And let's see, the third question is in regards to Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail closure, that we had a meeting on April 8th, and I did already indicate that in the staff report. So basically at the meeting, we had representative from the Churi, two representatives from the UROC, myself, Trevor, and the two people from RCAA. Other than that, it was stated in here, the Axel Lindgren Trail closed in February 2023. The public was promised monthly updates at the city council meeting. So between February 2023 and May 2023, we gave monthly updates because there was no access to Old Palm Beach. Subsequently, by Memorial Day of 2023, we opened Parker Creek Trail. And then we also made it clear afterwards that the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail was closed, and we put the signage indicating that it was closed because of the 7th generation restoration project. So there wasn't really any update to have because all it was the trail was closed. So the intent was to have it open by Memorial Day. We have been updating the planning commission regularly, and so staff was going to put like the steps onto the existing trail. But then when we approached the Huron management team, they indicated that it would be wiser to just reroute the trail now, which is part of Watchung land, and at least to have that initial stage. Plus, it'll go right down to a boulder. It'll be easier to access the beach. So it'll be safer, and the existing condition had gotten quite material. So that's my opinion.
Eli, one member of the public approached me and wanted to know if we're working together, in other words, with the Yurok tribe and Taz and the Coastal Conservancy and the Coastal Commission and so forth on the TMT. And my understanding is that you have folks from all of those groups attending the meetings, the closed session meetings about the trail situation. Is that correct, that you guys are working together on this?
Yeah, when we have our Huron management team meetings, yes, we're working together. We have one representative from the Coastal Conservancy, which is on that team. And then, of course, the city, the Huron, and the Huron.
And I guess I would acknowledge also that the Rancheria has in the past asked to be, have a seat at the table at that meeting as well. So I want to just mention that. Okay, questions for, so we don't have Lieutenant McCall, as I understand it, correct? He's on they're out handling some business right now in Trinidad.
Yeah.
So are there anything you want to add, Eli? And then I'm going to open to questions.
I don't know what that was.
Drum roll.
Let me just say that there was
I had a couple of questions.
Okay.
yeah, let me just note regarding Lieutenant Paul. So this afternoon, actually right around noon, I was driving by the park and ride and happened someone by the vehicle that's been parked there for over a week. So as I passed that, I saw a sheriff's car. So I talked, and then he stopped, and I told him, I says, there is a guy there because we haven't been able to locate a person previous to that. So he went and he talked to him, and then another truck with a trailer pulled up. I don't know if they were related. But either way, hopefully it's being addressed and will be removed soon, so we'll get it.
That'd be really good. We were checking to see, this gets convoluted, but there was an attempted burglary, weekend before last. And so we were checking with Lieutenant McCall also to make sure that that wasn't that person who was arrested, that wasn't their vehicle. So I'm glad you found out who it really belonged to, and we can get that taken care of. You had something.
Yes, could you update me when the traffic study results? Have we got any information from that yet?
I have not seen anything, so we haven't received it yet.
I saw the
Right.
across the road.
And actually, so all that data was being collected. And then the data will be analyzed by GHD. So once they finish analyzing it, that's when we'll get the report. So it's not going to be immediate because they need to analyze the data. It's not just a matter of printing it and giving it to us.
And is that data going to influence what happens on Edwards? Because we were going to get some crosswalks, and what's the
Yeah. Edwards crosswalks are still going to go through.
separate from the traffic?
Right.
Do you know when that work begins?
This year, it'll be happening this summer. Yeah.
One final thing, the curbs on Edwards up near where it turns into Ocean, they're all crumbled and they're sandbags or whatever's in the bags. What's happening with that?
Well, we had put the sandbags to help with the water at that point, but our city engineer had been on site along with Public Works, and they had placed the sandbags temporarily, but and then also Jack had indicated about that area. So the city engineer is aware of it, and between city engineer and Public Works, they're going to come up with some solution to that curve.
Questions or comments for you? All right, I will open to any public questions about the staff report. I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Eli. That was really great. At this point, we will open then to items from the floor, and this is items, members of the public can comment on things that are not on tonight's agenda, generally up to about 3 minutes. So if there's anything anybody wants to mention to the council that's not on tonight's agenda, this is a great time to come forward. All right, we have nothing, no items from the floor, so I'm going to move on to the consent agenda and ask the council members if there is anything in the consent agenda that you would like to pull tonight or any discussion you'd like to have. Did I miss something, Ms. Provo? Did you have your hand up? She just came off mute, right?
I'd like to pull number 4.
What's that?
Number 4 on the consent agenda.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I accidentally unmuted myself. I apologize,
Hey,
city
that's
council
not
member.
actually raising your hand, so we just make sure we didn't miss you.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
It's kind of like, you know, we're swiveling our heads back and forth, trying to make sure we don't miss anything online. So thank you, Jack. So Jack would like to pull number 4. I know also that Tristan Cole is here. If anybody has any questions, he could answer things, but if there are none, then we won't pull that either, so.
And I did want to indicate on number 7 and 8, the end of both of those task orders, it says executed on April 9th, 2024. We're not actually going to be executing it. You're going to be approving it, but we won't execute it until we get Caltrans to.
Just for a point of order, do we now go to any public comments before we vote on that, pulling that from the agenda, from the consent?
Oh,
Is that?
yeah.
Just checking. Okay, are there any public comments about the council pulling item number 4, which is an award contract for on-call city engineering services to GHD? All right, no comments from the public or concerns about that, so I'll bring it back to the council and all those in favor of moving that agenda item to tonight's agenda, from the consent to tonight's agenda. Oh, I will make the motion to move that.
I'll say.
Okay, Jack seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. All right, so we will make that, our first agenda item. So Eli, did you want to walk us through that a little
We
bit?
need to now approve consent, the rest of it. All we did was just pull.
Okay. All right, so do we have?
I move that we accept the consent agenda, not pulling number
Okay,
Second that.
all those in favor?
4.
Aye. All right, I should never do that. Okay. Eli, so if you wouldn't mind, it might take us a minute here to get to the packet page, which I am looking for GHD.
Okay.
You got it?
So-
Okay.
So this is regarding awarding a contract for GHD to provide city engineering services to the city. The professional services agreement is included in the packet. The action today would be simply to award the contract to GHD, who was the low bidder for the city. And not to execute the contract until after Caltrans has approved it. It's in the process of going through steps with Caltrans where they review the contract and they want to make sure that it's consistent with the work that they need to have done. And we're anticipating hopefully by April 26th is their target date that they would complete the review. But either way, the council's action today would be simply to award the contract. But when I execute the contract on behalf of the city, it won't happen until after Caltrans.
Do you have a question?
No, I don't think so. I just wanted to I just really wanted to know a little bit more about it, so. What this. yeah. So when I read it, it just seemed like there was a lot of money going into it, I didn't have a real good picture, so I thought we could know more about what you done.
Yeah, in the past, they would have called this like a master agreement. It's initially for a 3-year period, then it could be extended for an additional 2 years. And basically, any services that are provided by GHD, our engineering company, and in any of their employees, that's why each of the employees' pay rate is indicated in there. So Steve Allen is our city engineer, and he does most of the work. But Josh Wolf does traffic work, and there's a number, and then like Patrick Sullivan, Hagan, Short do work on the water projects.
This is, and by the way, for anyone trying to follow along, this is in page 41 in the packet. Does the rate that we're looking at for Steve, specifically for the city engineer, does this represent an increase in the hourly rate, or is it about what we were paying
Yeah,
before?
it is an increase, but it's still a reduced rate from what they would normally charge for other projects that do not have a contractual agreement. So our contract with GHD gives us a discount from their current rates.
Yeah, I saw that in here, the 30%, I think, right? Do you happen to recall what his hourly rate was? What it's, if not, that's okay. We
I
can
don't have it in front of me. Because it also increases, I think, up to 2.5% a year. So every year, it is a little bit different.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to get a sense. If it was going from like 200 to 300 or something, that would be, significant if it's.
Yeah, it's over 2 and less than 3.
Okay. All right. Well, we might follow up on that. Okay. Other questions or comments for you? All right. Let me go to public comments then. Any questions or comments about this consent agenda item? The contract with GHD. All right, then I'll bring it back to the council now. Since we did vote on the consent agenda before, I assume we need to vote on this item separately. So is there a move to?
I'll move to award the contract for on-call engineering services to GHD.
I'll second that.
Okay, for the second, all those in favor? Aye. All right, so that will bring us then back to our regularly scheduled program for tonight, which begins with proclaiming May as National Bike Month to promote bicycles as a means of transportation and recreation. And May is Bicycle Month, I believe, nationally, but also in Humboldt County. So we wanted to see if what we wanted to do from a Trinidad perspective around that. So Eli or Gabe, anybody want to talk about that? Or?
Proclamation together.
No, it was, well, it was a resolution that we've had, but it's something that's been done on at least an annual basis through, promoted by our friends at H.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
Yeah.
Colin.
Yeah.
On track.
Yeah, and it was brought to our attention by Jack, who is on HCOM. You want to say a few words? No, yeah. So basically, it's a proclamation to declare the month of May as bike month, promoting bicycles and promoting other means of transportation and recreation that are not using electric and or gas powered vehicles. So
I'll confess, I may have started this because I mentioned it to Jack and then Jack followed through and the two of us tried to, find out more about it because we thought maybe we could do something in Trinidad and have like one of the bike shops here and, just do something kind of fun for May.
And essentially, we've actually talked about it based on over years. They've been links, so we haven't done this the last couple of years, so it's nice. It's nice to come back to.
Yeah.
And we do have to realize that we're community attracts a lot of bikes up here, especially with the up shot on the week. So it's nice to get up partying.
Yeah, and this year it may be more participating with, you know, national and countywide things, but maybe next year, if we can't swing it this year, we would do something in town that would be special. Anyway, so that's that.
To add, yeah, currently the RCA, Red Brook Coast is, giving a $500 rebate for e-bikes. So to get more people to bike long distances to work back. And it's going on. It just started last.
Oh, that's cool. Is it eligible for anybody in the?
It's, income eligible, but yeah,
Yeah.
go to the RCA website for rebates and you can apply for that $500.
I had a question about proclaiming this. We don't have bike paths or designated areas along the roads that are for bikes. I know a lot of cities, they do have lanes that are for bikes. Does that in any way put us in kind of legal problem that we proclaim this as bike areas? But we have no accommodations for bicycles. So,
Yeah, I mean, naturally, bicyclists are supposed to utilize the lane of traffic. And if there is a bike lane, then you use the bike lane, but if not, yeah, well, the only place is actually on Edwards where it's used by pedestrians and bicyclists. And then Gabe is an avid biker. I don't know if you want to, I mean, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. good.
Very avid.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, as far as her question that, you know, because we don't have the designated bike lanes, then you just use the regular lane and then you're off to the side.
Yeah, can you talk about Edwards Street, the bike?
Just talking
anywhere,
in general.
Anywhere in the city, I just said that at least we have something on Edwards.
What's the question if we're in jeopardy at all? or-
yeah, because we're proclaiming it's bike month and as in y'all come, but we have no accommodations and we have no bike racks for dogs
Yeah.
or
I
pathways.
don't think it compromises the city's ability to welcome cyclists. In fact, I think I'm just looking out the window every day, as we all probably see people enjoy Trinidad. I think they probably feel it's much safer than maybe even some other communities like around it, but it's something that's been talked about, and it might come up again. Edward Street as being an alternate to Van Wyck for a while, you know, how we share that road, but I think of any real pitfalls to not having bike lanes in Trinidad. I think the speed limits are all nice, kind enough, gentle enough speed that shared roads.
And Trevor's here, our planner, so she might have some good notes to add in comparison to other cities.
Yeah, not that I know of. I mean, you know, it is legal for bikes to use the same lane as vehicles.
And I'll add that as doing a lot of biking. This is a pretty safe place, just easy place to, because it's just not enough cars, even in summers. It's not a very dangerous place to bike it. If you're at a little bit careful, you're not gonna get hurt. It's nothing like the worry about lights and all this, lots of cars and having a place where people are coming in driveways and businesses. This is a pretty easy place to ride around, so I get comfortable with what's smart. In fact, I'd rather not have one. Bike lanes marks all the number streets if possible.
I've seen cities that are really encouraging bikes where they have like a bike maintaining safe station where there's tools that are attached to a board so people can actually fix their bikes. I mean, my bike is broken. I need to take it to Arcata to fix it, but maybe if we had something local here to blow up our tires and fix it ourselves, that might encourage more people to actually ride their bikes they have.
Yeah, we did have a recreation grant. I think we're using it all for the tennis court and pickleball court, but if we had any spare money, maybe we could do something around bikes or bike racks. Like that. All right, any public comments or questions about declaring May Bike Month in Trinidad? All right, no.
Actually, I just had one more. The only thing I would add, I mean, I'm not saying to rewrite the proclamations worded very well, but with increased encouragement to ride bikes, I believe we should also say something in there about motorists, pay extra special attention in May, because bikes are really hard to see, right? If you're biking to Trinidad, you've come on the highway or some other way. So I would just, if we can add a sentence about, increased attention to looking out for bikes during May, that would kind of have the whole picture. Other than that, I would move to approve this proclamation.
Right, and I will second with that, addition of, traffic safety. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, passes unanimously. Happy biking, everyone. All right, next up is the discussion decision, update regarding, I guess it's really more of a discussion update and taking public comment on Van Wyck Trail temporary closure and progress report regarding actions taken to reopen the trail and or develop alternate pedestrian access. Should I turn this over to Trevor?
Yep.
Okay, Trevor, you're.
Good evening. Probably most of you are familiar with some of this history, but yeah, I think the city council first directed GHG to go find a grant to repair the trail in 2010. And they got a big grant from Caltrans to do a multimodal trail with a big retaining wall. That project became unpalatable to the public, various parties for various reasons. We looked at some alternatives back then, including sidewalks and improvements on Edward Street. But eventually kind of ran out of time to flesh those out a little bit better. And so at that point, but the trail is not what was and is not in a condition where it can be reopened safely for the public. And cities and insurance cooperative has made that clear to the city that they won't provide liability coverage. Trail needs to be closed. Part of that is because it has some man-made improvements, including overtaking and wheelies, so that affects some of the liability protections for the city that occur for trails. So the planning commission in 2020 approved the 6-month closure of that trail to allow the city more time to consider options. That decision was appealed to the coastal commission, which really should have negated the city's action. But because of the condition of the trail and because they wanted the city to look at options, they did not force the city's hand on that. And so it was allowed to remain closed. And then of course, COVID hit and sort of lost momentum working on that project. And we've worked on other projects since trail projects since then. So sort of went by the wayside until the coastal commission picked it back up again last summer. So for the appeal, the first step for the coastal commission's appeal is to decide if the appeal has merit. And so they did that at their September 23rd hearing. They found no substantial issue with the city's temporary closure. But the coastal commission themselves made it very clear that public access is regionally significant. Trinidad is an important access point, coastal access point, to take steps to so since then the city has been meeting monthly with coastal commission staff, finding alternatives, both looking at trail repairs, trail realignments, as well as improvements to Edward Street. And those things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. We've been doing that at a staff level and contemplating alternatives. It's also one of the complicating factors is that it's culturally sensitive in that area. And so both the Yurok tribe and the TAS have requested that trail close, and they have continued to assert that that's that's their stance. And even coastal commission staff have, you know, they've kind of had internal discussions with their staff of their chain of command. And yeah, it seems like at this point, staff would support closure of the permanent closure of the coastal commission itself, you know, doesn't always vote the staff recommendation. But anyway, that's where we're at. And we have met with the trail management team. There was also a consensus there that you know, it's really not feasible or appropriate to repair. So, and then our 6-month closure ran out in March, so I took that back to plan. It can't be open in its current situation. And so the planning commission did extend the closure for another 4 months, like 6 months, I believe. But they also made it very clear that they want staff to really make this a priority in terms of taking steps to mitigate the trail closure. We also met with coastal commission staff at a monthly meeting this Monday. And again, they also, you know, really stress the importance of some short-term improvements on Edward Street that can be done quickly to mitigate the closure of that trail, because it really, you know, there's limited pedestrian access from the significant issue. So, and then also the public at the planning commission meeting also, you know, felt very strongly that they want public input into the various options. So that's the intent of tonight, is to kind of give a summary of the things that we've been discussing and some of the pros and cons of each one. And so again, I think staff wouldn't recommend opening the trail in its current configuration or trying to do short-term repairs. I mean, the council could, you know, consider that further, but you know, that's not recommended by staff at this point. We are looking at the possibility of moving the trail upslope. So that requires cooperation of 3 property owners that own that land upslope. City staff have met with them. You know, there's no details or plan worked out, but they are at least open to considering that as an option. But again, that's, you know, it's going to require easements or purchasing a property, so that's going to take time. So, yeah, I think staff at this point would recommend that the city council look into implementing some kind of temporary short-term type improvements on Edward Street to improve the existing walkway that's there. A couple of narrow points. So it was back in 2001, 2002, the city removed parking on the south side of Edward Street in order to put in that shoulder. And it is narrow in some locations. I will note that, you know, the lane, the developed portion of Edward Street isn't particularly wide, but the right of way itself is quite wide. And you know, there was some concerns when the sidewalk was proposed in 2017 about the loss of some private improvements. And I'll just note that one of what I thought was one of the most interesting findings of the parking study that we did, which is kind of the time finalized, but is out in draft, is the number of encroachments in the city. And so I think that's really an issue that city council is going to have to grapple with in the future, not just on Edward Street, but in other locations, particularly, you know, if parking is more of an issue, we'll gain a lot of parking by removing some of those. So anyway, so, you know, I think staff is just looking for some additional direction on both long and short term, you know, and from the public, and, you know, solutions for public access between upland part of town and the harbor.
All right, thank you. So let me start with the council. Are there questions and comments that you want to?
I would support staff to move forward with working with the landowners upslope. I've talked with one of them already, very interested in helping our cause. So I think that instead of putting our time and effort onto Edwards, I think we should just really focus our time and effort to get these 3 landowners to cooperate and get that easement done, so we can move forward with this.
It strikes me that the Edwards improvement and the Van Wyck Trail are. The Edwards would solve the way to get down to the harbor, but it doesn't solve the fact that the Van Wyck Trail is a lovely trail with great views. So I don't see them as sort of exchangeable, interchangeable.
Yeah, and I think, and definitely that was some of the public comment, that, you know, Edward Street is not an alternative to Van Wyck. But, you know, Van Wyck may not be there forever regardless of whether it's moved up slope. And, you know, I think the desire of the Yurok tribe and the Ancestral Society would be to kind of minimize foot traffic there, even if the trails moved up slope, so that we would direct visitors to Edward Street, and Van Wyck would be more of a local trail. You know, we could have Vista Points, there's already a bench, or 2 benches on either side of that closed section, so there could be, you know, Vista Points there, but, you know, I think that, and I think one of the public worries was that if the city does improvements on Edwards, then it will just abandon. But I don't think that they're, you can do both, and I think both would be good.
What we're gonna be looking on Edwards, ready, I mean, is already planned. Bill, with that, not that we need, that she should talk about it at this time.
I mean, no, I mean, the crosswalks are, there is, you know, the sidewalk on the north side between Trinity and Hector. But really, you know, crosswalk at Lindo, there's a sidewalk on Lindo, but I mean, it's, whether you're walking on the north side or the south side, you're pretty close to traffic.
One of the things is both trails too, is to make these kind of connections to your trails, so that people will find ways to move around a little safer. I want to, Jack was saying, I think it's really important that I really concentrate on the Van Wyck section, and let's see what happens with the Edwards, how we get the crosswalks in, and we look at the whole picture of things. There's also some other ideas that might be nice and striping. That wouldn't be too expensive. That might, I would think that would alleviate a lot of the problems. And I guess, do you have any information on how many people have been hit by cars or injured on Edward Street in the past years?
No, I don't, you know, I think the city's road safety plan that you guys did a couple of weeks ago, looked at that, and, you know, I don't think there's been any incidents that I know of, and I think traffic is generally moving slow enough that I don't particularly feel unsafe, but, you know, it is pretty narrow in spots, and it, you know, could be realigned, you know, if people are going both directions, or you have kids or bikes, it is pretty narrow, and so I think, you know, people would feel more comfortable if it was demarcated as an actual stream.
I agree. I just think we may be able to handle that really concentrated on trying to get that trail, the trail put in there. I think would be kind of satisfactory to everybody, at least in the community, who would be using it all the time.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, as was indicated by Trevor, we want to also have an alternative to Van Wyck, even if we do improve Van Wyck, so that we don't have all that traffic going that way. If people would utilize Edwards where they feel safe. So a section that's between Trinity and Hector there is that sidewalk on the north side. But then if people wanted to use the Van Wyck Trail and use an option to the Van Wyck Trail from Hector to Galindo, there's only that, basically the bike lane that pedestrians also use. So we were indicating that one option is to put a sidewalk maybe on the north side of the street, since the council and the public didn't want it on the south side of the street as one option. The other option is to take where that bike lane is, and in the staff report, some pictures that were shown by Trevor indicate ways where we could make it a little bit safer to help separate the traffic, or at least help the traffic identify and realize that this is a dedicated area, so that they can hopefully stay away from merging into where people are walking. Because currently there's nothing really separating them other than line. And as we know, a lot of times people sort of weave as they're driving. So if there is something there that could scratch their car if they got too close, then maybe they'll stay away from it.
If you want to weigh in at all, Steve, or, okay. I guess I was kind of thinking of this as a two-parter in a way. One, thinking about the Van Wyck Trail, which we've been talking about for some time. I love the idea, and I want to thank the property owners who are potentially willing, at least, to consider having somebody called it a goat trail or a single track trail. I guess my recommendation would be no signage to either divert or direct people to that trail, because the locals will know it's there. And if we put a sign that says go this other way, then people are just going to say, oh, okay, well then I'm going to go on this trail. So if the goal is just kind of keep it more local and informal, then that would be my recommendation. I think continuing to look at Edwards, I kind of had my notes that, you know, we should continue to, like, we need to fix the boardwalk. So we're working on that. We're adding the crosswalks already. And then, yes, I mean, personally, my personal opinion is I would be in favor of a sidewalk. Walking down there, I often feel like, I mean, nothing's happened yet, but we don't want anything to happen. So long term, though, I would think we would look at that. I don't think that's a short term thing from my perspective. So I guess I agree with Councilor Tuttle that, you know, if we could just focus our efforts on trying to get that upslope trail in, I think that would make most of the folks who use it happy. It's also low impact for those who are concerned about the cultural aspects. So I think what I'm hearing from the council is that that's kind of the direction we're leaning. So with that, though, one of the main reasons we have this topic is to get public input. So are there public, besides, we did read the comments, by the way, that were sent in, but anything else that anyone wants to add? Mr. Needham. You're on mute, Bill. Mr. Needham, can you hear us? Okay, when he may be.
Oh, I got unmuted here. I was having a problem. I apologize. I am a resident of Trinidad and obviously the public representative on the Trails Committee. As you've all noted, it's unanimous by the residents of the city that Van Wyck be reopened. The only issue is whether or not the present trail would have any culturally sensitive impact on any tribal rights. And so far, Mr. Bruce filed a letter saying that he was there when they rebuilt the pipe and there was no determination of any culturally sensitive areas then. Obviously, if they work at the place where it presently is located and they run across any culturally sensitive problems, they have to stop work and make a decision on how to proceed. So I just don't think that's an issue at all. And if it can be realigned and the property owners are willing to do that, then it should be moved there. But under no circumstances should we simply say, well, it's possible that a culturally sensitive issue might arise, therefore don't proceed. I mean, that's kind of putting the cart before the horse. First, you have to determine that there's actually a culturally sensitive problem before you decide not to proceed. And That's my comments. I would certainly hope that you agree to proceed with the use of the Van Wyck Trail. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay, Tristan and then Mrs. Hostler Coniston.
Thanks. I guess, well, thank you all. I'm glad to hear that it seems like the council is pretty much on board with the reroute of the trail. I mean, we had a lengthy discussion at the planning commission meeting, if you guys didn't watch that or tune into that. And I think there's certainly a lot of frustration among the planning commission over this topic and other trail closure topics. But one thing that really, I guess, bothers me is take us back 3-4 years to when it was originally closed. I mean, I really don't like that the city's like getting strong armed by our insurance company to close these trails. I mean, I wish we could have a meeting at the trail tonight, so that way I can walk the trail in my slippers and you can see that it's passable. Obviously, we know it's rugged. It's not passable for everybody, but it's passable. And I just, I think in addition, so, okay, the city wants to avoid liability by closing the trail because our insurance company won't cover it. I think we're also exposing ourselves to liability by keeping it closed, especially keeping it closed illegally or improperly during the past 3 years during the appeal period. So like, sure, the city is trying to avoid its legal liability or reduce its legal liability, but I mean, there's a lot of people in the city who might say that by having that trail closed, it reduces their overall well-being, and that can be a lawsuit right there. And I totally support rerouting the trail. I just really don't think it needs to be closed during this process that, it's closed for the next 6 months. Who knows if we're gonna have a solution in the next 6 months? Probably not, knowing how things go around here. So, people are using the trail right now as is, even though it's closed, but I would appreciate it being reopened. Because for people who know how to walk on uneven ground, that the trail is passable. And I just don't think it's fair that the city's sort of backing down to the insurance company and just be like, oh, well, I'm not going to take that on. Our insurance company said that, sure, I'd like to see the city just stand up for itself and the residents. That's all.
Thank you.
Well, currently, there's an exemption from coverage of the trail by the insurer. The insurer is a JPA of 50 cities, which means that if there's any liability, then all 50 cities share in that liability. But by having the exemption, that means that if we reopen it without improvements, then that pass with the insurance company, then the city is 100% liable for anything that happens.
Ms. Hostler Coniston, I believe you were next, and then Ms. Provo, and then Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm looking for clarification. I apologize because I'm not up to speed on this project or subject. Mr. West, maybe at Trails Committee, you guys have been talking about this for a while, but I don't have any background. What I do remember is walking the trail myself 3 or 4 years ago before it was permanently or closed. Whether it was permanent or not, it was closed and the grant was lost. I remember that. Yeah. And I remember our tribal historic preservation officer, Rachel Sunberg, walking the trail and saying it was a culturally sensitive area, but only because of the natural resources, if I remember correctly, not because of, the possibility of burials or, extremely sensitive, but just that cultural proximity to the village is what I recall. So I'm trying to find out, am I correct in those statements tonight? And really, I'm not hearing what you want to do. I'm looking for stronger language regarding that. And I really believe Trinidad Rancheria should be that cultural voice as well. I mean, not just York Tribe, not just Tri-Ancestral Society, Trinidad Rancheria, and maybe you have some things to the typical number. So just trying to get clarification and get up to speed and make sure the Rancheria's voice is part of the decision.
Thank you. Do we want to respond on some of the background? I think it might be helpful for others as well.
I'm just gonna tell you that we've decided not to, on the Trails Committee, we're working on a lot of trails, the Van Wyck and Lindo and the main trails that have to do with the drive, well, the land transfer, the land that we have, that we're sharing. We've not worked on those trails at all, so that's why it doesn't come on the Trails Committee, so we've left the Van Wyck Trail out of the conversation we've been asked to, so we work on the other trails, that's why you haven't heard from the Trails Committee.
Okay.
Do you want to cover the brief history or?
Say, Sherry is also there from New York Tribe, can
Gonna-
probably at least share some of
Okay,
and then
that's
I-
fair. We'll do that. And then I'm happy to share what background I know, and we can kind of come back to the council with a little bit more clarity on what we're suggesting. Ms. Provolt, I believe you're next.
Thank you so much, city council members. You know, I know. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, we had some feedback.
Okay. So thank you. Appreciate this conversation, and I know it's been a long process for the city and the public community and cultural leaders to try to find a resolution to mitigate this situation. As the York Tribe, we've recommend keeping it closed for many reasons. But just recently, I was walking the trail with Eli, and we were looking at the Axel Lindgren Trail, and then we walked down to the Van Wyck Trail, and it continues to slide there. And I guess my question to the council is that, what's the long-term plan for all this erosion? These trails are sliding, and right by the Axel Lindgren Trail, there was a little footpath, as you call it, or a goat path that went from kind of a parking lot over to the cement slab, and that has failed like 4 feet. It's slid. So the long-term, assessment of these trails and the land sliding, I think, has to be a priority for the city. It won't be long if we don't address it with the drainage and the runoff. We might be looking at some road conditions. That little trail, that path trail that was up by the old lighthouse slab, like I said, it slid, 3 or 4 feet, and that's not far from the road. So we need to start thinking long term of, how we're going to address erosion on the hillsides in Trinidad. So thank you for allowing me to say that comment.
Thank you.
I'd like to respond to that, Ms. Provolt, at the coastal resiliency workshop that we housed here in the town hall, I don't know, a month or so ago. That exact topic was raised, and that feedback was collected by the folks that are doing that project to identify areas, like you say, that are prone to erosion, and start working on alternative routes to the coast in areas that are more stable. A lot of times these trails show up because it was the path of least resistance at the time, and then it just sort of stayed put. And because these areas are known to be failing, especially the last several years with the rains, so at least the folks that are building the recommendations for the coastal resiliency are aware of that and are gonna sort of highlight that in part of the resiliency plan that talks about access, to identify stable areas and intentionally and preemptively reroute the trail so that we continue to have coastal access, but in an area that's not just gonna fail with patchwork. So I just want to share that that is out there sort of and I do encourage folks to go to the final coastal resiliency workshop. I think it's in June. I'm not sure, but that's when we'll hear these final comments. So I just want to add that.
And Cheryl, I was just going to comment that Rachel Duclos is one of the 3 property owners, and she's present here. This afternoon, we met for an hour. We walked along the trail. We talked about, the fact that the current condition is not feasible, and about possibly going upslope. Her and the other property owners have had concerns about exactly where that trail would go, because that is on their property. And and one of the main concerns is the height of the person walking across there. So I mean, if people are just walking, it probably, be a detriment to their property value. And so, there may be another way that it could be done, but we want to make sure that if there is another way, that it is acceptable by all the interests, and I don't know, Rachel, if you want to weigh in anything regarding our discussion, because I just want to make sure that it's clear that it's not just simply going upslope, but we want to make sure that if we do reroute it, that we're working with the property owners and we find a way that's amenable to them as well.
You have to, it's up to you if you'd like.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Yes, please.
So I haven't been to a meeting for a really long time, with the pandemic kind of broke into this stride. But I've come up with, every few months now, and I've been in a long-term discussions with the city about the trail. Even way back when I bought my house in 2016. So I actually have a question, and I would like to weigh in. I'm finding that I'm more confused, not less confused, about how the Coastal Commission is thinking about the trail. Because I feel like when I watched the appeal last fall, that Trinidad really got dinged for not following procedure or being fast enough to open it. And now the staff is saying maybe it should be permanently closed. So I'm very confused about that.
I find it interesting too. I think that's a good observation, because and I think part of it is the difference between the coastal commissioners who made those statements at the September meeting and now talking to coastal commission staff. I think, there has been more of an emphasis in, state and public agencies to be more concerned about, environmental justice and equity issues. And, I think same with the Galindo Trail, there has been an evolution in coastal commission staff over that trail. And it appears at the staff level, there's an evolution on the Dam Lake as well. And again, they've taken it up, I think, all the way to the executive director in terms of having this conversation about cultural resources and trails. And I'm sure, this is an issue that's statewide. It's not just Trinidad. So I'm sure they're taking that into consideration. So yeah, it's been interesting, and they haven't put anything in writing. They haven't made any official statements, and that is not what the Coastal Commission itself has said. So I think it's an evolving.
I'm in conversation a lot with my other 2 neighbors that kind of touch the trail, and we are very much in agreement about what we'd like to see and how we support the trail. But I can only speak for myself tonight.
Okay.
So we want to see the trail open. actually, so all of us have very, very long-term relationships with Trinidad. I was just telling Eli today that I've crossed over into my 50th anniversary of coming to Trinidad since I was a kid. And I know Eric and Jesse, that it's like decades of relationship with the city of Trinidad. We all remember the trail even from before we owned our properties, actually. We don't, and I should say, I don't want to do anything, and this is, it's very deeply uncomfortable as a property owner to agree to something that then kind of hurts the Churai Ancestral Society and the Yurok. That's very deeply uncomfortable for me and the other homeowners. I'm also deeply uncomfortable with the idea of coming up on grade. So the idea of upslope, ever since I've understood upslope from the 2016 days, and this is before I knew anything about the cultural sensitivity of the area. When I first bought the house, I didn't know anything about the situation, all the different opinions about the trail. I always thought we'd push back into the slope, because what that does is replicates what the trail was like when I bought the house, which meant that people would use the trail kind of on and off all day. Not a lot of people actually, but I would kind of see people from the chest up. They'd come from each end of the more stable part of Van Wyck and kind of go down. And I always assumed that we're going to repair the trail and I would be an easement or a sale of land. We're pushing back into the slope to kind of replicate what that looked like before. I have gathered and talked to Eli, I've gathered from public meetings that a lot of people are thinking that upslope really literally means like up the slope onto the grade of my property. And that makes me deeply uncomfortable. Because at that point, first of all, that's like way more feet into in my property than what I thought we might do. But it also, once it's on the flat part, it actually starts to make me nervous, not only just my own quality of life at the end of the trail. Now people are like up onto my backyard. It's flat, and now there's no real way to keep people from drifting farther into the property.
I see. Yeah.
So when it's not flat, there's no sense. People are just kind of walking on the trail, enjoying the view and passing by the house. When it's flat, now I get nervous about people sitting down. I get nervous of like to have a picnic because there's a bench in your mind. I get nervous about people with like their dogs.
Right.
I know it's our best efforts to keep the dogs on the leash, but I get nervous about people then hanging out with their dogs. And then it becomes, I just get a little bit more nervous.
And it sounds like what we owe the property owners, if we agreed that this would be a next step to explore, is we would need to develop some sort of design drawings or engineering or what have you, right? I mean, I'm assuming that staff has thought that if we did move ahead, that would be the next step to show exactly what it would look like, where it would be, you know, and then the public and the property owners first, and then the public would weigh in on whether that was feasible. Is that kind of what the next steps would be, you guys, or?
Yeah, ideally, but in addition to that, we have to take, all of the voices, which would include the native community.
Yes.
And so far, all we've gotten that would come close to that was like a goat tree. So that's not quite the same. We have to try to figure out
I'm just saying that, it's going to be difficult. It may be difficult for property owners or the tribal entities or the public to weigh in too much because we're just calling it a goat trail or upslope. And I think I too was envisioning, I don't know about the rest of the commission, the council, but I was kind of envisioning, oh, we're just going to move it upslope and it's just going to be a little single track trail. And you're right, that would mean it's up onto your property, right? So, and that sounds like that may not be what the property owners had in mind So
I'm only speaking to myself on that.
Yeah.
So I can't speak. for
at least
you.
for you, yes,
For me.
yes.
This has been a big piece of the conversation with the neighbors. We're like, what actually are we talking about? We don't really know.
Yeah, so I think we need to figure out, and I think we need to get a little bit more clarity. I think what tonight's meeting is about is hearing kind of, this was good information from you about what your perspective is and what your preferences are. And then from a council perspective, we're kind of exploring like what would be a direction that we would give staff. Like no decisions are gonna be made tonight, like we're building a trail or we're not building a trail or what have you. We're just exploring, kind of hearing from everyone and then deciding what we would maybe recommend staff do as the next step, if that makes sense. So
And
I don't know if that's helpful, but
I'm also hoping there is a solution for the continuing,
erosion,
We
yes.
talked today about doing armament from the bottom of Old Home Beach, because it's a matter of time, upslope, push into the bank. It's a matter of time before it just continues to kind of,
It continues to go down.
Yeah.
No, so Counselor Ladwig is correct. The coastal resiliency project is, we had some conversations, I think last meeting, I don't know if you were there, Steve, I think so. We had some conversations about both shoring up at the top and shoring up at the bottom. So things like gabions and so forth, protecting the toe of the slope. And everybody from the community that was there was able to give, kind of their input on what they'd like to see. And so there's a lot of opportunity for that. I know Ms. Hausler was there and looking around to see who else, but yeah, so we've got some good input, I think. Anything else that you want to add or that we should be thinking about?
Thank you so much for just giving us the opportunity to hear what's going on with your property. I've been talking to Eric Fishman as well, and he's really excited about maybe doing it with he has a community garden right next to your house. He's my neighbor and he was sharing that interest. He's like, you're gonna do great tonight and he's happy you're here. Would you be interested in doing like a small little picket fence to have that protection?
an ideal world for me,
Sure.
we don't do that. That there is a solution to push into the fill, was fill. Eli and I were down there for quite a long time today. Kind of, there seems to be a logical place for it to go. If the Yurok and the Churai and the community and there's the money for an armament, everything kind of becomes, everything, all the stars align in every way. I'm not going to hold up a trail for that reason. But that would be everybody agreeing that this is a great thing to do. And I don't know how we get to that point anyway with Yurok and the Churai. And again, it's like so deeply uncomfortable to think about doing that against the wishes of the other community members.
The last letter received from the Churai Ancestral Society was at the last planning commission meeting, and they did note in that, they didn't say they were in favor of it, so I want to be really clear about that, but they did note in that letter that they were considering it. So it didn't seem like they were as opposed to kind of a redirection of the trail as they were to recreating it. Anyway, that was, and I think Mr. Johnson's on the planning commission, so he's probably going to comment about that as well, but.
That's my understanding about the stance of the Churai Ancestral Society now. I haven't heard that personally, like directly or officially. Maybe they did submit a letter.
They sent a letter to the planning commission. I think it was the last meeting.
Yeah.
March.
Yeah. We can add that. We can circulate that if anybody, I can send it to you via email if you'd like.
I mean, I know, well, for me, things shift and and you're not gonna try, okay with the trail. That's really gonna be the hardest thing for me and our neighbors.
And I'm sure they appreciate that consideration, so.
Yeah. But again, if all the stars align, if all the opinions shift, if there is a design that everybody, community, my neighbors, I would love to see the armament. That would be amazing because I think that, that allows a lot, there's concerns about not just a new trail then being kind of eroded over some short term. But my understanding is that the TRI also would like to see an armament because then it protects the cultural resources that are on that slope that continue to slide.
Yeah.
So all the stars align. I am not gonna be the one hold out. But I really don't want to come up on grade. I do want to be really honest with that. I don't think there's any reason to kind of to not share my opinion tonight. I don't want to come up on grade.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good to know. Other questions?
Is there options instead of going into the soil, which is culturally sensitive, to have a bridge, like some type of bridge
Yeah.
that you could just lay on?
I think we've talked about it. I mean, over the years, I have to say with the Van Wyck Trail, which, I mean, to Trevor's point, started in 2010. The Planning Commission approved grant funding. The City Council said they'd prefer not to take the grant funding. And we've had so many different explorations of different kind of, I mean, it's not to say we shouldn't revisit it. It's just that
It is,
we've looked at a lot of different.
I mean, it'll be really interesting to see what the coastal resiliency plan comes up with. It's a significant issue, but it is a hugely complicated and difficult issue. The feasibility of doing any armoring, there's no access thing there. So I mean, the expenses, the feasibility, but then you lose the beach with sea level rise. So there's always, it's not, there's nothing in the short term. Yes, I think the slides are moving faster than we can move on. But anyway, I know
We're talking about a bridge. We were talking about a bridge on the trail.
On the trail.
The trail, yeah. And that's one thing that's been suggested, and Steve, you were on the council at the time, I believe. My recollection is that the community felt strongly that we shouldn't over-engineer, and they wanted a very light touch. I mean, that was the feedback I think we all got at the time.
To span a bridge across all of this unsteady area would be such a great span that the abutments on either end of the bridge would be many, many, many feet into the soil. Because that's the stuff that's moving, right? If you put a bridge there, it's just gonna be on the beach in a few years. So they had to expand it, and now we are talking about, I think it was 150 feet, my number.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But it was big, much bigger than could be a light touch.
Like a piling, basically.
Yeah.
50-foot piling.
So Rachel and I were walking there and talking. And her configuration, I have a very good idea of what she thought could work.
Okay.
When she said pushing back into the slope, which I could share with our city engineer and come up with some kind of a design that basically would be a lighter touch, but at the same time, something that would work.
I think a design concept would go a long way. I mean, what I hear everybody saying is they're kind of in favor of light touch, although there were some questions about kind of the history and so forth. But, and then the property owners could decide whether or not that worked for them or not. And, if it doesn't, that's their prerogative. So. Anything else you want to add?
Good to,
Then I'm gonna go.
look at one that cuts, that pushes into the hillside, and then maybe another one that's the at-grade goat trail, but with vegetation or fence. Two options just to look at.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So sort of the light touch and the goat trail, for lack of a better way to put it, options. Let's hold the.
View shed is very important for
Yeah.
all three properties. And you know, what Trevor's just saying, you know, with the, you know, fence, with the shops or whatever, you know, whatever it is, it has to be very minimal. Because otherwise it'll start blocking their views.
All right, I want.
There used to be like 10 feet of blackberry brambles at the end of the property. If you put those back and nobody will sit down next to the trail.
Say that's definitely a good fence material.
Edible fence.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate it. Mr. Johnson, you've had your hand up for a bit. Would you like to weigh in?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate this conversation tonight. Actually, I think Tristan Cole covered much of what I was going to say. If you have not had an opportunity to read the transcript from the last the Planning Commission meeting, I think you could get a real sense of the frustration from not only the planning commissioners who have to continually approve this temporary closure, and as well as some of the frustration that was shown and displayed by the public. And I certainly appreciate and understand that there are an awful lot of moving parts to this issue, and it's not something that we're going to solve here or probably within the next couple of months or anything like that. But I did have a couple of observations, and one of them is that it's very difficult when you look at the staff report, which just shows several different options, but there's really no decision matrix or decision method that is there that would help the public make some sort of assessment of what makes sense. And what I'm referring to, I guess, is to a certain extent that as I think some people have already mentioned tonight, having some very simple sketches to show what some of these options look like would be very useful, and perhaps even having some very rare, raw numbers of cost impacts for each of these options. It's very difficult to just take a look at these on a piece of paper and say, this is the one that makes the most sense. Because there are cost issues, there are cultural issues, there are property issues. Obviously, the public is got a lot of comments about this. And so with that in mind, I was trying to consider what makes sense in terms of trying to get some more resolution. And I was wondering if it might be useful to have, which we have done in the past, and I think they've been very effective in other organizations, including the Rancheria has done this, and I think are very effective, and that is to bring the public together with all the information that they have and let the public have an opportunity to comment. We can take a look at the various options and the different cost impacts, and perhaps having a separate meeting where people can come together and really take a look at this and put their comments on a piece of paper, and we can slap them on the board, just like we've done in the past. I think might be very useful. I mean, when you look at, I apologize, I had to leave myself, but when you look at the public participation tonight on this very, very important issue, it's not a lot. So I think we really need to figure out a way to better engage the public and get more in from them in terms of what they see, what they view as the future of this trail. And as I said earlier, I recognize this is a very, very complicated issue. And I certainly appreciate everyone that's been trying very, very hard for the last 10 years or so to try to resolve it. But I'm just hoping that we can maybe figure out a new paradigm to move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments regarding the Van Wyck Trail? All right, I'm seeing none, so I'm going to bring it back to the council based on what you've heard this evening. Any additional comments, direction you want to provide to staff?
I would just echo what Richard just said, and that is, if we're going to have this topic, I think we need to have something to discuss in terms of specifics, right? So yes, there were images in the packet. I appreciate that, but Like we've been doing more and more, there's a sort of a staff recommendation at the bottom just to consider. And I think that would help. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, definitely that would be good for the next meeting upcoming. Trevor prepared this report and I think she did a great job because what we heard tonight, we wanted to hear from different aspects because, you know, the most important thing is to try to get people in the planning stages rather than us just to put something out there and then probably get a lot of darts shot at.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I guess,
I just want to be clear, I'm not like in any way, you know, I liked what we had tonight. I think the next step, right? Because there's a lot of change in everybody, it's nice to have that historical perspective. And I think moving forward, right, hearing from the people who are actually affected by this, if you and your neighbors could come together and say, here's what we're willing to consider, right? Because if the only consideration is something that is just simply outside of your comfort zone, then we don't have to keep talking about it, right? Because I hear you, right? I would not want someone walking in full view in front of my, you know, my view, right? I remember the days of, you know, the little gopher head kind of walking through the Van Wyck Trail and like, oh, I wonder what those people see up there. Just my head, right? So if that's not an option, then let's just not talk about it anymore, right? Let's come with some real hard, like, this is a step we've taken. Let's vote on this. And then if it's voted down, let's stop talking about that and look for another option.
I think there's another consideration, which is the financial side of this too. One of the reasons that, you know, so back when we had the Caltrans grant and everybody felt that it was over-engineered, it was a $700,000 grant that the city had. And the city relinquished that grant. At the time, I felt like we should have moved ahead because the next phase would have been the engineering side of it, would have just been the conceptual stuff. And then we could have used part of that money to do whatever it was that we wanted to do. But in general, just the community felt like, oh, that's, you know, we don't want to spend all that money re-architecting the Van Wyck Trail. And I have to say, I'm a little frustrated now, all these years later, that everyone's saying we want the trail. So it's like, now we don't have the money. So I just got to be honest. So that's why I'm kind of in favor at this point of something that is low touch, that doesn't cost a lot of money. You know, I would like to explore a little bit more about what the cultural sensitivity is. If it's natural, if it's other, you know, if we have information on that, that would be good. I'm in favor of keeping the trail closed for legal reasons. I do believe that, but I also think, I hear the frustration from the Planning Commission and they're taking a lot of the feedback. So I do think that going forward, we may not be able to agendize it every month, but it should either be agendized or in the city manager's report until we can come up with sort of that straw person proposal of what it looks like. And to Steve's point, we may get the straw person proposal together and the property owner say, well, this is just simply not feasible. In which case, let's not spin our wheels and spend a lot of money. So, and I'm kind of passionate about this one because I can't even tell you how many hours that we have spent talking about the Van Wyck Trail. And we really need to either, you know, do something or just agree to not do something. Because I think we've all reached kind of the level of, I hear the frustration by the Planning Commission and members of the public and ourselves, frankly. So that's it for, and staff. Yeah, we're all like, yeah. Where's the wine when no, I'm just kidding. Okay, so
And
I
then
think
also if we could get, I really appreciate the language that Ms. Hosser asked for, because I think that will help us. I think there's right now almost a hesitancy to say what it is without knowing what it is, right? So if we could get the reports from the heritage folks, from Rancheria, from Iraq, whoever has contributed over time, and that way we know exactly what we're doing. So we
we
can
have a lot of that before, right?
I think it's oral. I don't know.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's.
Well, then perhaps we could get something for us that is sort of, this is the stance. And I know I've read it before, and I'm not good at searching through old minutes from old meetings. So I know it's out there. I think that would really help everyone wrap their heads around what we're talking.
Could a current letter be requested?
Pardon?
Could a current letter be requested for the next meeting?
Whatever format it is, I think it would be nice for us to not have to rely on certainly my memory. And just so that we have something like, this is the status, this is what was said at the time of a previous project or whatever it is, so that we're not just speculating. Because I think with the change of people so over time, we lose that. And if it's oral, right, then we lose that. And so let's get it in the public record for this discussion.
Miss,
It
also
seems
comments?
like there were letters 3 or 4 years ago, and it was kind of a large project.
Yeah.
I'll concentrate on my rate.
Yeah.
Search your archives and see.
I know I've read them, Jackie. I just don't have
But
them.
we're happy to
Yeah.
send a new letter as well. That would be good for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point you're making. That go back to that project at that time, because that's when I think we got most of the feedback.
And I think it's
I
really
probably have-
valuable to see a letter dated 2016, so that we know that this is not a new topic. Right? And if it's still relevant, I believe that holds a lot of value to, or adds a lot of value to that document. This is not a current thing, this is a forever thing.
All right, does that help?
Yeah.
Looking at staff.
Do we have a plan?
I think we do. Do you want me to recap, or do you want to, or?
Well, you want us to come up with some options and also to do some research as to what some of the concerns are from the past.
Perfect. All right, and then and then we'll talk about getting it agendized on the council meetings when staff is ready. And in the meantime, maybe you can just put it in your staff report next time you like, because I'm guessing that we won't have it maybe for the next meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful approach to that topic. It's a difficult one, but it's, in the end, it'll be a happy day. It's a happy trail. Okay, I think there's a song. All right, number 3, discussion decision regarding resolution 2024-05 opposing state of California ballot initiative 21042A1, the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. This is a little bit of a dry part of the meeting, but we will get through it.
Come on now.
Yeah.
It's just a sexy.
Yeah, okay, so the League of California Cities has asked cities to take a position on this. The league opposes this measure proposition that's planned for the fall in November. It's called the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act, but according to the league, they call it the Taxpayer Deception Act. And so far, over 200 cities have produced resolutions opposing this. It basically would raise the current threshold of 51% basically to pass a measure 50 + 1 to 3/4, which would be 67%.
Opposed. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So as a result, it would make it difficult for cities to pass any kind of measure. And as a result, that's why the league's taking this position. So I prepared 2 pages in the staff report indicating the impacts that this would have. And then also attached is a resolution that was suggested by the league showing opposition to the submission. And other than that, from my recollection, the legislature has passed and approved another measure that would be on the ballot at the same time, requiring any measures that are changing from 50% to 67% to also be passed by 67%.
Is it retroactive?
Well, they originally wanted to do it for March, but they were unable to do it for March. But considering they're gonna be on the ballot at the same time, I'm thinking if that has more votes, the courts would probably interpret that would, the will of the people, yeah.
All right, any questions for Eli on this? Okay. Any questions from the public regarding this ballot initiative? All right, bringing it back to the council.
To approve the resolution in item number 3. 2024-05.
I'll second. All the. Or was there a second? I didn't hear it. Okay, Jack wants a second. Jack second.
I don't care. So, no, somebody's gonna say.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Sorry, I just didn't hear you. Quiet. All right. Woof, it's time for the discussion decision regarding appointment of members of the Animal Advisory Committee. So, do you want me to turn it to Katie or Eli?
Yeah, actually, let me start with turn it over to Katie.
Okay.
So at the prior meeting in March, the council approved the Animal Advisory Committee. And in that membership, Katie Breckenridge became the chair, Jack Tuttle the vice chair. And indication there was that we wanted to have 3 other members. And one of the positions that was created was to have a representative from the rancheria, since they own the harbor and they have a lot of issues with animals down there as well. So Jackie, who's present here, has indicated that she would be willing to serve on the committee. Ted Pease, who was officially bitten by a dog. And as a result, unfortunately, because of that, encounter, he definitely should be on the committee. And then Andrew Davis, who is a resident of the city, has also expressed an interest. Katie was able to contact all 3 individuals and get their consensus to be on the committee. The indication was that we wanted to have either a letter of interest or to have them present. So from my understanding from Katie, Ted Pease has indicated in an email, Andrew Davis is available online and Jackie is present here. I'll turn it over to Katie to see if there's anything else you need to add.
And nothing substantial, just that I'm looking forward to getting the committee going. And I think it's going to be ultimately helpful and a lot of fun too. So it won't just be about aggressive dogs. We'll see what else we can do.
I like a lot of fun also, which means that we want happily ever after rather than people being hospitalized and put in jail.
Yeah. Do we, let me go in order then to see if any of the folks who are volunteering would like to say anything. So I'll give you that option if you'd like to. Jackie, would you like to comment?
If it's possible to have an alternative or an alternate, an alternate person if I'm out of town, and I'm traveling on a big work.
It would be fine. Just, if we know who it is, we can either communicate with you and then you pass it or directly with them.
Should we put in a resolution for designee just to make it clear for everybody?
I can send a formal letter with who the alternate would be.
All right, and Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Just looking forward to getting started with Katie.
Thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any, let's see, we don't have Ted, so I think that's it. Unless there are any other comments from the public, either for or against the volunteers, Mr. Johnson. Do you want to volunteer, Richard, for the Animal Advisory Committee?
Oh, if all you're discussing right now are the members of the team, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm sorry, I was going to make a comment on more general on the whole issue.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a great idea. I think public participation in this issue is very important. I just have a question, though. I'm curious as to why we don't have someone from law enforcement on the team. My feeling is, in just brief discussions that I've had with other people, that a lot of these kinds of issues that we have in small town like Trinidad is down to how we implement these ordinances or laws. And I appreciate the fact that we've got some very great experts that are going to volunteer for it, for the team. But and I just feel like we're missing something when it comes to, excuse me, actual implementation of anything that comes out of the team. Thank you.
Respond
Yes,
to
please.
Richard, the animal control officer and or veterinarian, as needed, can be called to the committee. In addition, I think I want to start with a small group and see where we go. It may be that you're absolutely right, and that, you know, we need some teeth to join our committee. But I'd like to start and get the ideas sort of more formed up before we address them.
And if I could comment, so ideally, we would invite the animal control officer to every meeting. They would be present at every meeting, ideally, but not as a voting member. The intent was to have the committee made up of the local people who would be voting, but the animal control officer would be someone who could make recommendations and then be there for implementation, but not a voting member. That's how it was structured.
So I should get in touch with the animal control officer.
Yeah, and we should, you know, include them, like every time we have a meeting, that we would send them an email. But yes, and then I could work with you too on that. But we'll also have a staff member present.
Perfect. All right, well, I think it's wonderful that we have volunteers already for this committee, and I would move to approve Jackie, Andrew, and Ted. Or I should change. Yeah, do you want to second it?
Oh, all right, yes, I will second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, the next one is, next topic, excuse me, is the November 2024 city election and sales tax measure update.
Yeah.
This agenda item is kept in the back burner of every agenda, being the last item that we'll see probably leading through the November election. And it's there just to keep us accountable, to keep us on task. I like it because it helps me, but it also will help council members keep staff on task. And as we look at April in this calendar, we were supposed to this month discuss possibly the April water rate adjustment. This calendar was put together back in January at the turn of the year. And also to discuss the sales tax extension, which we wrapped up last month, so we can check that box. But the water rate adjustments, just so everyone is aware, that will be coming forward most likely, I think, Eli and May or
Yes.
we pushed it back just a little bit because we're spending a lot of time technically analyzing those rates, which don't necessarily have to do with the upcoming election, but all these things are going to come to a head here in the next few months, making, you know, quite a bit of heavy lifting required during the May, June, July budget adoption. So for right now, We are relatively on task with the exception of the water rates, which pushed back possibly up to a quarter. And I say a quarter, meaning we were hoping to have them implemented by July 1st, which now could be sometime, hopefully before September, if not sooner. Next month, as you can see from the list, we've got a resolution calling for the general election that will be before you, a resolution calling for an election on the sales tax before you, and then we'll be digging into the budget and talking about water rates. So this meeting was kind of gentle. The next couple of meetings might be a little thicker in terms of what we're asking of the council to wrap their heads around. So just something to consider.
I believe I have a vacation coming up.
Yeah.
I feel like homecoming.
Yeah.
So no action required, just
I'm
just
joking.
presentation and
All right, any questions for Gabe? Okay, any public comments? All right, back to the council. Thank you for the update, Gabe. Look forward to that. I think it's gonna be an interesting discussion. In all seriousness. Future agenda items. I want to tee up the general plan for a discussion, just what's the latest on the different elements and the status. We haven't talked about it for quite a while, and I realized the other day that it's kind of slipped our focus a little bit.
I'd like I don't know if there's anything new or whatnot, but a closed session update on our litigation. It seems like we haven't had any discussion about that. I thought things were happening. So if there's anything substantive, Eli, that can be given to the council, that would be good.
Yeah, actually, Russ originally had wanted to have it on the agenda either the last meeting or this meeting, but it's still being discussed amongst the attorneys.
Okay.
So we didn't have anything concrete, but I'm sure we're gonna have something in May.
It just, yeah, it was more of a feeling like, man, we haven't heard from this for a minute. So, yeah, but only if there's some substance.
Other topics?
I'm curious about a PWA, and we've heard about it. We talked about it, but maybe we could get a feel of where they are. They've been continually doing things, I believe, so we can update what they've done, where we are with their research. We should.
This is a big topic, but annexation, I don't think that's something we're gonna get to in the next couple of months, but we did talk about maybe just starting with some education on, yeah, having a presenter come and just talk about it. And maybe that's somebody from forget the acronym.
LAFCO.
Thank you, LAFCO.
And seeing what we have coming with the general election and the budget. I mean, that
Yeah.
certainly takes precedence, because we need a budget July 1, right? So we only have 2 months for that. So maybe a summer project, and I'm not trying to like
Oh, no,
overstep, but I
that's
think,
exactly right.
I think a summer project of getting the council and the community up to speed on annexation
Yeah.
would be useful.
Post the water rates that study in the budget and some of those other things. All right, any public items, Jackie, please, that you'd like to see us discuss in the future?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, and you might have just talked about it, I'm not hearing everything. But on the TAS case that we have, the litigation, is that what you brought up?
Yes, that's Steve brought that up.
My concern for the Rancheria is the tri-management team meetings being public. I thought they were supposed to be public. I've gone back over 2 years on the public calendar. I'm not seeing them being posted. We are patiently waiting as well for the litigation to be completed. But we should be able to participate as a public member. And if there's executive session, I think that would be reported out into a public session. So, I mean, there's a lot of effort, and I really applaud the city for working closely with Yurok Tribe and TAS, but we should be an equal partner in closures of trails, in everything from in and around the city of Trinidad. We don't get that same communication. Eli and I do well communicating, with each other, except I don't feel that the awareness of making sure that Rancheria is getting the same notifications. On appropriate information. Just wanted to bring that up, and ask the question as to why those meetings aren't posted in public. And then, in the future, we would like to get those notifications.
I think it would be good, so that they've been closed recently because of the cultural sensitivity. But last time, I think Eli and I spoke about this. We talked about maybe, I mean, I would like to see a public portion, and then maybe if there are cultural sensitivities, then that could be in the closed part of the meeting, because like we, council hasn't been able to participate either, so. Anyway, I don't know if that's possible, given the subject matter, but if so.
Yeah, like you said, the council hasn't been able to participate. And initially, the management team said they wanted to have council participate.
Right.
And then we made it clear to them that the only way that the council could participate is if it's done in open session. So yeah, I mean.
It's a bit of a
like
catch-22.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So ideally, like the mayor is saying, and I had indicated the same thing, is that we can try to have as many public meetings as possible, and then have executive sessions as part of that. So we'll try to see if they can do that. Otherwise, ideally, we can open them up a little bit more. Unfortunately, sometimes they just say there's going to be something that's cultural, and as a result, have it closed. And, so we'd like to open them more.
Maybe we can schedule, a portion that's closed or something, because
I
I think
think
the
it was
council would
part
like
of
to.
your, research you did with your legal counsel, and there was,
The G to G protocol.
yeah, and part of that was having those meetings open regardless if TAS or your tribe want them open, there has to be a public portion that is open based on your policy. So just wanted to remind everybody of that in a little way. And the trails should be talked about in open session. If we're talking about remains or burials, I understand that being in closed session, but it can be reported out in such a way that those kind of sensitive details are not discussed. Thank you.
Thank you for. Other comments? Okay.
I was going to ask something just real quickly, and this is separate from our meeting here. We do have Jennifer online, we have Anton present, we have Gabe present. Normally, we have our staff meeting at 3 o'clock on the day after, which would be tomorrow. Staff has a meeting at the Rancheria at 3:45 tomorrow. So I'm going to suggest, number one, either we have our staff meeting and get your opinion tomorrow at 2 or Thursday at 3. So, yes. One or both or whatever. That's flexible. Okay. 2 or 3, 2 tomorrow, 3 on. Okay. Jennifer, can you hear us? So anyway.
It's right here. You
were still.
Yeah. How did that?
Yeah, that's okay. So Jen.
Free tomorrow for.
Yeah, so tomorrow, we just mentioned staff is.
Start calendaring now.
Normally, we have it tomorrow at 3. I have a meeting at the Rancheria with some staff members at 3:45 tomorrow.
Hey, guys.
We have it tomorrow at 2, or we have it at 3 o'clock.
I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn the city council
Okay,
meeting,
yeah, that's
but
So
those
she's here now.
staffs.
I did it before because she was still on.